Okay, so let's build a ridiculously large infinitely AFKable ice farm. What do we have? Redstone bit wise? Should be enough. Hi guys, and welcome, gnembon here. Good news, with 1.13 we are getting sustainable packed ice and blue ice, but the recipe, especially for blue ice, got really expensive. You'll likely need 81 ice to make one blue ice. And to make fast ice rolls like this one, that's 1000 blocks long, you need 500 blue ice. You can rip it off the ice burst or craft it yourself using a whopping 40.5 thousand regular ice, which is almost 12 double chests. Obviously this is much better option than just ripping off the iceberg, don't you think? And for that we need a good ice farm. And the one that's behind me has a few interesting characteristics. First of all, this one is fully AFKable. You can just stand here with a pickaxe in your main hand, some food in your offhand, have both right and left mouse button pressed using your keyboard, and just walk away from the computer. The farm will also recycle your pickaxes before they break, so you are not losing on that front as well. Also, from redstone components, all you need is right here. The actual farm portion uses no redstone, like nothing really, absolute zilch. And the farm itself could be made, doesn't have to, but just can, pretty much entirely out of ice, which is interesting. And there are a few slabs here and there, a lot of water streams and signs, but other than that, it's all ice. I mean, these parts can be made of any material, these walls here as well, but for example all the player paths, item streams, and the blocks below where the ice forms need to be made out of ice blocks. So I thought, because most of it was supposed to be made of ice anyways, and it's just fun farms, let's make it fun and make everything out of ice, just because. It's a nice farm made out of ice, Iceception. So let's talk how it's made. Ice forms randomly from water sources, providing the location is cold enough, water block is touching from any side some other block that is not water nor air, and is absolutely nothing above it. What is cold enough depends on the altitude, so the Y level and the biome. In icy and snowy biomes, that's any Y level. In extreme hills and taiga biomes, it has to be on a specific height for ice to form, and for example in plains and mesas, deserts, etc. it won't form at all. In general, if it's a rainy weather but instead you see snow falling and snow layers forming around you, this also means you can build an ice farm here. There are a couple of modes d'emploi we can use for the ice farm. One approach would be to make a big cuber system like this one on Scicraft server. That would work quite well, but it's not an AFKable design. I mean, it still requires effort to harvest the ice once it's cubed, but you get lots of it at once. Another thought I had was to use some sort of a conveyor system to bring ice to the player while they AFK with picks in their hands. Similar to the cobblestone generator idea, but ice forms very slowly, requires full sky access, so it wouldn't be a compact machine and likely be very laggy and complex. Still, it might be a good option because since the player is stationary, you can get the ice and repair their pickaxe with mending at the same time, so have it like 100% AFKable. And then is this approach where players move along the farm via water streams and harvest ice in place where ice forms. So instead of moving the ice, we move the player. With this we can go AFK to get the ice, but it would either cost us diamond picks, or we can recycle picks later and mend them afterwards, which is not 100% AFKable, but at least the ice part is AFKable, and mending of picks is actually fast and cheap process. Pickaxes for mining ice don't need to be super enchanted. If you find one of these in your world, that might set you forever in terms of the pickaxes, to the point that you may decide not to recycle them at all, just throw them away when you're done. So this would be an interesting starting point concept, but I made it much simpler and much more space effective using some nice tricks. The challenge with ice farms is that it requires a lot of space because of the sky access requirement, and the game checks actually the full column of air, so even transparent blocks like glass will obstruct it. And because of the slow ice growth, we need a large area to grow a lot of it. So how far away from the player ice can form? Let's devise a small test. I'm staying here on this bedrock block with all the area flooded around us, and because that's the only block that touches the water, ice can only start around me. To speed up the process, I'll speed up the game. Ice forming is not part of random ticks. It has its own phase, its own routine. So to speed it up, you have to speed up the entire game, not just random ticks. And what is an important part of our demonstration, I have purposely chosen a block in the chunk corner to show a couple of things. So let's wait it up. As you can see, ice formed around the player for up to 8 chunks out radially, even though we have a render distance of 12 here. It is also important to notice that it doesn't go with the exact distance from the player, so it's rather based on the chunk itself. So it doesn't matter where have you been in this chunk, ice have spread evenly across entire chunks. One of the features of AFKable ice farms is the fact that ice should freeze as the player is moving along the farm, so making sure that the ice freezes in other parts of the farm is very important. So if we are in any place in this center chunk, even in this very corner, we can see that we are guaranteed to have a 6x6 square area of chunks actively keeping freezing the water. But even if we leave for a moment, it would mean that only one chunk on the very opposite edge of the farm is not freezing, which would also be fine. So that's why in this case I stick to the 6x6 chunk area for the farm, but there's another reason for that as well, which is pickaxe durability. With the design I showed and 6x6 harvestable chunk area, we get about 5,500 ice blocks to harvest. An unbreaking 3 diamond pickaxe can harvest up to 6,000 blocks, so finishing one round means it's the best moment to safely exchange player pickaxes. The module itself is very simplistic. First of all, player can pick up blocks up to 5 blocks away from them if they are pressed against the block. If you are at the back of the block, that's 4 blocks. But if you're at the front, that's 5. So in this design, we need to make sure that the player is pushed to the front bits of the block. The player also travels in the water streams that moves the items away, which saves a lot of space for us. Interestingly, there are some blind spots in the water streams, which is fine. If a player is not wearing any depth strider gear, they would have enough momentum to jump from one water stream to the other and just be pushed on the ice. And the same for the items. It's interesting because wearing depth strider boots are actually decreasing our sliding momentum, which will cause us to stall, an interesting fact for you. So no depth strider in this farm. Obviously there are some dead spots for the items as well, but you know what, just don't worry about it. Most items, because we are on ice, will have some linear momentum on the axis of the water stream, so even if they land on this block here, they will typically slide a little bit here and there and catch either this water or this water, which will send them further. So don't stress about it. The loss is included in the philosophy of this farm. Here we are trading a little bit of loss for a very simple design. Now there are 2 ways to get the broken items out. If you for example place some block here via pushing it from the bottom with a piston for example, this will prevent water from creating this cascading flood effect, which means that water won't be reforming. And this will create those water streams that will push broken ice towards us. We have here signs on the other side behind our backs, so those water streams won't mix up, but we will be getting the items back. The other way of achieving the same thing, instead of putting a block here, is to leave a hole below the same location, which would mean that the water from these 2 crucial sources won't fill up that place they fall into, and the water will be reforming as well. And once we are done with the water harvesting, we just need to cover that hole, or just lower that block, and we can simply do it by just running a player over these pressure plates once they are in the next module. Very simple redstone. But there is one issue with that solution. If you have any spots that are not frozen, and this will happen if you are continuously going through the farm, there is high chance water will start to swirl around and create water sources in the entire platform anyways. We could make the platform smaller, like 2 or 3 water streams long, and just rely on player crossing in the next section to form the water bag. But if we look closer at what happens when we have water chasing us as we break the ice, it actually works magically by itself. So what happens is, since we have water sources here all the time at the back of the tray, when a player breaks all the blocks here in one swoop, water will start rushing from the back and from the side, pressing the harvested ice blocks to the side and to the front. So what you can see here is water reforming in this kind of a diagonal wave by merging from these 2 positions. All items in that particular block will get some momentum towards this direction, and because we are all on ice, they'll keep their momentum and end up in the water stream. And as we progress, this wave will be rushing from the back here and from the side, and adds a little bit of extra momentum to all the items in all these 5 positions, pushing them down towards the player. And even if there are some items left, they should be swooped with the next batch. Obviously, there will be some loss involved, but apparently it's not that huge, and it's about 3% according to my test for 1.12, including ice bits that get caught in between the water channels. In 1.13, water reflowing is handled differently, not via general block updates, and happens much quicker, so we get about 10% block left on the platform. So it seems that in 1.13 having shorter platforms with the occasional pistons in the corners might be a better way to do it, but the simplicity and the redstoneless design and the wow factor of the fact that how it's magically pulls the items towards the player, I think are winning here, even with 10% losses. But in general, this is the approach you can use in both versions without the need of using any redstone at all. So let's look how it can be put together in our big farm. Here we have 12 of these modules. It turned out luckily that the width of each module is 8 blocks, so we have exactly 2 per chunk. And I made the paths make 91 blocks long, so they also spawn 6 chunks. As you can see, in this corner everything is chunk aligned, so we stay in this chunk to load the entire farm pretty much all the time. And on the other end, I kept the water streams the same max length, so the player path sticks out a tiny little bit outside of the 6x6 area. As I said, it's not a biggie, it only affects the very corner of the chunk and only in 2 positions in the farm, and only for a few seconds, so it's not a big deal. Items are conveniently separated from the player on the turns and thrown in the main collection stream, which goes all around the farm to collect items from both sides. All the blocks that would be in the reach of the player, so 5 blocks in front of them, would need to be cleared so he can swing their pickups without breaking them. So for example here to block the waters I use slabs, which are just below the player aim position. Also the water sources in the water streams have these extra signs above them, and this is to prevent them from freezing. But you can cover the water streams just by itself. Here at the end where the player finishes the round, we need to transport them back to the beginning. Then I continue the water streams, but if you really have to put some sort of a fast play conveyor system, that would technically up the average yield of the farm up to 20,000 per hour, but I don't think it's really necessary and it will break our no redstone vibe we have here. When the player arrives at the station, that's pretty much the only bits of the redstone we have here, we exchange its pickaxe. The player holds left and right click on the mouse not only for food, but also to place the pickaxe on the item frame, which we then smash with a snowball, and then dispense them a new pick and a new piece of food. We hold the player for a brief moment in case there's some lag and they have to pick up the items, and then we send them back for a new ride. As you can see, all the picks have right about 200 durability left after the round, so it's the best time to get them ready to repair. And if you really want to make this farm slightly bigger, going into the 7x7 area, you can slightly increase the use of the pickaxes, bringing them a little bit lower. It also takes a tiny bit more than 1 chicken of saturation to break all the blocks here in the area, so if you want to AFK for a few days, we can do it. Just start with not a full stack of chicken and you should stay balanced for many hours, dropping 1 chicken in each round. But you can also opt in for a no food option. Just use some good saturation food items like steaks or golden carrots, and a stack of these should get you going for more than 20 hours at a time, so that should be plenty. The thing is, you don't want to eat too often, because when player decides to eat, they will skip a row of ice. But thanks to our dual side water flashing reserves, that should not prevent water from forming back in most cases. Each round around the farm takes exactly 17 minutes and 15 seconds in the first harvest, so the entire farm fully frozen, we should be getting about 5300 ice per round, so 18,500 items per hour. And this will drop to 17,500 per hour with each continuous harvest, because not all the ice will be frozen. So that will be it in terms of 1.12. So now let's check what happens in 1.13. So I just loaded the farm as it was in 1.12, and already we can see some issues. One small change is that this corner water block doesn't push us out anymore, and that's not a big deal. A little reorganization here and we should be fine. What's a bigger deal is that there is a bug that even flowing water can freeze. So all our water streams are just pooped at this point. This also affects the paths with flooding, as the ice can now form in weird places, but this actually turns out to be fine. And this is a proper bug, so I'll try not to forget and leave you a link in the bug tracker with it in the description. The thing is, we can work around it, and in this case by just giving the water stream some roof, some protection. But this is technically a water duplication issue, because we are getting an ice from a block that shouldn't turn into water source at the first place. This could be exploited to get, for example, movable water sources, for God's sake, and this fact alone would make this bug fixed before 1.13 comes out for sure. Just kidding. Also, we'll need a similar cover with daylight blocking blocks all around the farm as well for the player to prevent phantoms from spawning, since now that's a thing, but there's a bigger issue that I would like to talk about. So in this farm you would want to AFK by holding your mouse buttons, left and right click, and then walk away from the keyboard. And this has been done in the past conveniently by rebinding keys from the mouse to the keyboard, which are easier to press or kept pressed and won't risk moving the mouse. So let's check how it works. So if I aim at the sky and press and hold mouse button, the pickaxe will do one swing and now it's technically pressed. So I can just run around and mine blocks around it. Now let me rebind it to the keyboard. And now I'm pressing again using the keyboard. Now instead of a continuous action, what I'm getting is this herky-jerky animation and I can't really insta-mine blocks anymore. I mean, I do insta-mine them, it's just mining action is sent out just a few times per second, not continuously. It's like in this case, you can't really use it to mine blocks in the farm. So how does it affect certain types of AFK farms where you rely on the mouse being pressed? I don't need to tell, it's kinda nasty. I hope it was an accidental change and it will be fixed, because this at least creates an inconsistent gameplay experience for players that can only afford the Minecraft and the computer but cannot afford the mouse, for example. Enough said. So here we have a modified 1.13 version of the farm. All the water streams are properly protected, player path is also phantom spawn proofed. As I said, I slightly redid the pickaxe exchange station because the corner water streams from 1.12 wasn't pushing players as we would expect it to do so. The ice paths, due to the water freezing bug, is a little bit on the spotty side, but it turns out that this has some minor effects on this farm. In terms of the results, it's not bad. We have a slight dip in the output due to the water flashing change, but turns out that the random spots on the paths and some random unfrozen pockets may have a positive impact in making these proper small water streams to push the items out, because the loss comparing to the first harvest with the old paths fully frozen is actually a little bit less. I mean, this wasn't any scientific test, I just ran the farm twice, first with all the paths frozen, and then as I go, whatever was left, quickly switching the output in between. Partially due to the lack of proper tools to measure stuff, but mainly to the mouse attack bug that I just described. But in general, we can expect this farm with the continuous harvest to have about 16 to 17,000 ice blocks per hour, which is pretty decent. So that's all what I have, guys, for you today. For those who wonder where the episode 20 is, I was planning to use it for the new garden farm, but now with 1.13 CoFF I decided to skip 20 and we'll be back to it at some point. Nobody said that numbering of the episodes in this series has to be in order. Check the Star Wars saga, for example, and stop complaining. But there you have it, guys, an almost redstoneless AFKable ice farm that you can build pretty much out of ice and signs and a few slabs and a few redstone components. Okay, but you get the gist. So you'd probably ask, can I make the farm smaller and still AFK at it? I would say yes, you can, but you still need to wait some time in between the harvest to let the water freeze, so I don't think it's worth it. On this bombshell, it's time to end. The world downloads for both versions are in the description. Also, the links to the backtracker are there as well, so check them out if you want. If you've enjoyed it, don't forget to leave me a like, subscribe if you're new, leave me a comment in the comment section below, and see you in the next one. Bye bye!